Welcome to Uncompromised, the podcast where we talk about regenerative agriculture, the economics of farming, and how we can uncompromise the industry and the food that we eat. Today we're going to get into what happened on the farm this past week, and we're going to do a deep dive into the second principle of regenerative agriculture. But before we do, consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel. We are on a mission to restore the soil on our Ohio Christmas tree farm by transitioning to fully regenerative farming practices. We're also bringing chestnuts back to Ohio. But is any of this possible? Do you want to find out? If so, I think you are in the right place. So get subscribed, learn with us, and let's talk about the next generation of farmers in America. So with that, I am your host, Kyle, and I'm joined by our business partner and longtime family friend, Kevin Mullinex, and my dad, who is the founder of the farm, Scott Anderson. Welcome, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Hey,
Doing good.
doing good. We're getting some rain.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing. You could use a little bit more of it, but we are getting some rain. So
Raining right now, actually.
yeah,
Right.
raining right now. That's
Needs to
right.
keep going.
What kept you guys busy this week?
Well, you know, Kyle, we started. Well, I guess last Friday and Saturday, if you remember, we had a crew out here that was resealing the drive. So it's a big area, a long drive, and
I'm laughing because I definitely remember it
podcast.
because they were here when we were recording the last podcast.
Oh,
and
they
it
were
was,
prepping the asphalt and the weed eater was going and just
well,
totally
they
threw
finished
off our
that.
groove.
They finished that on
I
Saturday.
mean, no one actually, it's frustrating because no one heard it because I put a filter on the audio, so it drowned everything out. So it was really hard for us to talk and have a conversation. So we were really struggling while there was all this noise going on, but no one, it kind of just looked like we were struggling to have a conversation,
Right.
but
Well, I couldn't tell. It didn't look that way. Number one, the filter works great.
yeah, it's amazing
Wow,
what AI
it's
can
amazing. And no, you didn't. I watched it on Sunday, and no, you guys didn't look like you were struggling at all. So
Oh, well.
it went well. But
We
anyway,
appreciate that.
they finished on Saturday, but we had to park the coffee hut in a different location. Made it really awkward and a bit challenging to get that thing in and out of here. And of course, we were all hampered. We couldn't cross any of the drives, so we were kind of down for a couple of days. It wasn't until
Right.
Tuesday when we can actually get back to mowing and watering our chestnuts and all the normal things that we do because we had to stay off of the pavement. But fortunately, that's done. It looks great, and
Yeah.
and we're off to the things we normally like to do.
Right.
yeah.
So in terms of coffee hut, we had pretty bad Monday, pretty bad Tuesday until Tuesday afternoon at my daughter's swim meet where we had the coffee hut, and it went really well. It's one of those things where had a lot of good conversations that might lead to a lot of good somethings.
Mhm.
Well, we had one good something come, and I don't think we've told you about it yet.
Oh,
We
yeah?
got an event on October 3rd booked with another food truck. They're going to be serving breakfast, and we'll serve coffee over at Wagner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, your dad also just reminded me that October 3rd is the day that reservations open for the Christmas tree season.
Yeah, just like last year.
So,
You got to walk around that somehow?
yeah.
Yeah, so you know, when we're doing our reservations on that 3rd of October, Kyle's the one manning the computer, opening things up, making sure the website is running okay. I'm answering the phone calls that we get from folks who are trying to get in and that kind of thing. So that leaves poor Kevin here to run the coffee hut at an event. And so we'll check and see if maybe Megan can help us out. She's been our fall two gal.
Saving our bacon a few times.
So she's going to do that here coming up on the 8th of August. She's going to help at the Englewood Art Festival.
Right.
So she's going to save her bacon there a little bit while you guys are working on the chickens.
Real quick, if you're a coffee drinker and you're looking for a solid brand that supports regenerative farmers, check out 7 Weeks Coffee. It's what we use in our coffee and chestnut hut because they're faith-based, they have a great mission, and their Dominican blend is sourced from regenerative farms. They do not sponsor us, but because we use them in our coffee hut, we have an affiliate link that we can share with you guys. So if you use our discount code ADVENT, you'll get 10% off of your order, or use the link that's in the description below. It's a great way to support our channel and our farm. You get a discount on great coffee, and then we get a kickback. So it's a win-win.
One thing that we completely forgot, our ice machine came in.
Yeah, right.
Got that hooked up, making ice great. I ordered ice bags
Okay.
for the freezer.
I
Those
figured that
should
was the thing to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
So 10-pound bags, so a little bit
Okay.
smaller, a little bit easier to maneuver.
Yeah, they're gonna fit into those
Right, and the cooler's a little
cooler a
better.
little bit better. Yeah, that's good.
That thing cranks out ice, I think, perfectly for us. Yeah, as long as we're projecting ahead of time that,
Yeah, what we're gonna do,
duration day or whatever.
save it all up. Yep.
Yep. So that'll be great.
So we're using the, it's nice to have the new ice machine because we use that for chicken evisceration to keep the carcasses cold, and also for the coffee hut to serve ice drinks and ice lattes, things like that.
Right.
So it's dual use, and it'll save us some money going down the road, hopefully.
Oh, it definitely will. I mean, wish we would have forecasted a little bit better at the swim meet there. We ran out of ice, and I called my mom, who happened to be on her way.
Oh no, did you have to buy a bag?
We had to buy a bag, but on top of that, my mom is not good with directions. Also, I gave her the pool that we were at, and she typed in something completely different in her GPS and went to the gas station and then turned around and went back the opposite way and ended up going further up the highway or something. So anyways, it took much longer to get ice than it should have.
We didn't lose a customer,
We don't know.
but we came really close.
Really
I mean,
close.
literally, I had 0 ice. And Tuesday was really good. There wasn't much breaks
No.
through the 4.5 hours that we were there. But the one break we did have occurred right at that point when we ran out of ice. I had nothing. And she showed up maybe 7-8 minutes after that. And then we had a customer. So it worked out great.
It worked
out great.
Really well.
Yep. So we were good.
Now, the downside to the coffee hut is Wednesday, we were having a good start to the day. Got about half hour, 40 minutes into my shift.
Yeah.
Just had made a coffee for a customer. 5 minutes later, another customer comes up. And I take her order. We're chatting and everything. And I turn around, go to grind the coffee, and there's no power anywhere in the trailer.
Uh-oh.
And I'm freaking out, apologizing to the customer, running back and forth, pulling things out, tripping all the breakers, and nothing. So I gave her a refund. She promised she'd come back. We'll see. But yeah, the generator died temporarily. Still runs, but it's not producing power. We got the automatic voltage regulator, the replacement part in, because that's one of the things that they said would be a potential fix. So got that in today. Not a fix.
Yeah. Swapped it out. Didn't work.
I don't know.
Yeah. So we contacted the tech rep
Yeah.
for the Westinghouse generator that we have, and
Yeah.
they went through the troubleshooting thing, and we did all the initial stuff the way we needed to, and they said it was probably one of two things. One was this the voltage regulator, or it could be a control panel module. So I ended up ordering the module yesterday as well.
Yeah.
So that's due in tomorrow. So we're going to send back hopefully they'll take it.
Hopefully they'll take it.
The automatic voltage regulator. We'll try the module, see if that does it. We hope that it will. If it doesn't, then we may be looking for another generator.
You're sure it is the generator, not like a fuse in the hut?
Oh yeah,
100%.
Yeah, it's the generator. It definitely is. It's not putting output. It's not providing output to any of the modules,
Right.
the power modules, and
Well, and another way to answer that question, when we hook up the trailer to shore power, everything works.
Okay.
yeah. So
Well,
anyway, that was that one.
that sucks, but hopefully we can get that fixed soon.
Yep. We're gonna give it our best shot anyway.
Yeah. So,
Then you did some watering.
yeah, I sat and, I forgot to blow out the wand.
Okay, yeah, but
As we're
you took
talking
what
about
about
that.
6 hours yesterday?
It's about 6 hours. And some of that, it takes longer because we don't have enough batteries
right
to do a full run of the entire field.
Yeah, all 415 of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd still have to come in to top off on water, I think. But to charge the batteries back up.
Yeah.
Takes about half hour, 40 minutes.
And then we're starting the process of putting fencing around the chestnuts as our kind of our permanent solution to, once we have cattle in there, preventing the cattle from rubbing up against the tubes.
Yeah.
So we made 26,
25.
25 plus one. We did make that one. So we got 26 that are made, and then we went ahead and put them out there. We put the T-posts out there, and we started driving a few of them in with the tractor, and decided it was just too dry yesterday to really do that effectively. So we wanted to wait for the rain today and then try it again on Saturday, tomorrow. And I'm hoping that's going to be the case, but we really do need a lot more rain than what we've gotten so far. We only had 3/10 of an inch all day.
Yeah, and that's...
But we're going to try the T-post
We'll
driver, and we're going to try that out tomorrow and see how that goes. But we'll get 26 of them in the ground, and then, because that's about all we can put in the trailer. In terms of the fencing takes up a lot of room because they're 2 foot wide. They're 2 foot in diameter, and so we could put 20, 25, 26
Right.
in the trailer at best, and then get that out there. That takes care of 2 rows, and then we can put the posts on the back, and then just knock that out. But it takes a bit of a time. It's to do all that. So it's not something that, we're going to be able to get done quickly, but at least we're starting that process.
So how many rows do we got to get done this year?
We got to 157
157.
is what, we have 3 rolls worth of fabric. So about 157 is what we can put in the ground.
About 16 rows, give or take.
Yeah.
That's not the right math, is it?
No, it's not the right math, but I haven't done the math to figure out how many rows, but just divide that by 13. It gives you the number of rows that we have. So it's going to be more than 10.
Right.
It'll be about 12, probably, something like that. But yeah, that's I think that's captured what we did for the week.
That's the prime time highlights. I mean,
Yeah.
you did mowing,
Yeah, did the standard mowing.
got your mower back.
Yeah, we did get the 3rd mower back, and so we're now 100% on our mowers, which is, in the peak of mowing season, having 1 down is a bad thing.
Right.
Having 2 down, which we did, was a really bad thing. We got one of them back up and running, and then we had to send this one back to get a clutch. The clutch seized up on the PTO, and so we got that fixed. That's back, and then I did all the service roads and the perimeter fence perimeters, all that stuff, and Mom's working on taking care of the rows. So we got quite a bit of mowing to do.
Real quick, if you rather enjoy your podcast or content on other platforms from YouTube, like Rumble, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, we are now on those other platforms too. And so those links are in the description below. So if you click those links and go subscribe over there, that would be great. And one thing I wanted to give like a little anecdote story about a thought that I had on Monday as something occurred that you probably don't want to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. And that's it's related to the coffee hut. It happened on Monday. We had an issue with another coffee vendor. To back up a little bit, we started the coffee hut about 1.5 years ago. When we started, there was really no competition. There was, your typical Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, things like that, but we didn't really have any other like brick and mortar, small town cafes to compete with, or even mobile coffee vendors to compete with, except for one. There was the Bean Hive. They were a little coffee hut that also served coffee, but they primarily worked out of Troy in Tip City, and then every once in a while they came into West Milton. And we were actually working with them, or we tried to work with them to get them to come out to the farm during the season. That was before we opened up our own coffee hut, and they weren't able to do it because of winterization issues with their freezing pipes and everything. So that never worked out. But once we opened up our coffee hut, I think that was it was spring of last year. And then in later summer, maybe early fall, sometime around there, we got word that they closed down, or that they were going to close down.
The Bean Hive.
The Bean Hive, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember when I heard that news, I was sorely disappointed. I was like legitimately kind of sad that they were closing down.
Yeah.
Because I didn't consider them to be competition per se. I consider them to be a friendly partner in the coffee business, I guess, because we knew like where they operated. We never like wanted to. Actually, another example is the Blue Bus Coffee Roaster, who they're also a little small time roasting company. They're not really a competitor because they don't serve lattes or anything. They just serve their coffee beans. They might make coffee to promote their beans, but they're essentially a roaster.
Right.
And they actually operate here in Englewood at the Englewood Art Festival. That is one thing that I would love to get the coffee hut into, but we're not going to do that because they are already there. That's their turf. We're not going to step on their turf.
Right.
We're also very friendly with them. We served their coffee in our gift shop one year. Very nice people. Very cool to see their setup. They have a really cool little old school bus that they've converted.
Volkswagen van.
Yeah, it's a really cool van. And they're just, I mean, it's cool to see other vendors like that. And then earlier actually it was about a month ago, we got word that there was another coffee vendor in town. And I remember when I first heard about this, initially I wanted to be excited about it because I think that it's really cool to see their setup and there's a lot we can learn from them, things like that. But unfortunately, the circumstances in which we learned about them were kind of weird and strange. They were, you were going to our usual location that we've been going to for the past year and a half, and well-established location. We go regularly. We have it posted on our public schedule for the hut well in advance. And they were parked there one morning in our spot. And I think in that moment it was fine because you went over and talked to them and it could have been like an easy mishap, miscommunication, something like that. So we just brushed it off, no big deal. Well, it kept happening over and over again. And it happened again this past Monday. And I thought that was kind of frustrating because they're clearly targeting us as competitors, direct competitors to their business, when it doesn't have to be that way. And I just think that our true competitors in this business are the large franchises like Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, who are owned by these private equity monopolies. Those are our true competitors. Those are who we're competing with because they drive out small mom and pop stores and cafes, and we can't really compete with them. And so the other small time vendors are the ones that we kind of have to partner with and be friendly with. There's a lot that we can kind of learn from them. We can work together. We can get more people interested in good coffee locally, and then get them interested in getting those people interested in supporting their local vendors. And there's just all kinds of ways. I mean, I think it's fun to kind of learn from them too. Like whenever I was in Columbus last month, and I was driving by and I saw a coffee hut on the road. So I pulled over just because I wanted to see what their whole model was. Like I wanted to see how efficient they ran their little, the inside of their operation, and wanted to see what kind of espresso machine they had and stuff like that. They had a dual group head, which I thought was interesting. But it's always fun to learn from them. I know that when we've had several events where you and I have attended. I don't think you attended them. Maybe you did, but they were events that we set up the hut at, and there were other food truck vendors that attended. And they would always give us free food. They would come over and chat with us. I mean, we just had a good time. It was very friendly. They would give us advice. I remember the one guy at the church bazaar was just giving us all kinds of advice and associations that he was a member of, things like that.
The food truck community in general is a super friendly community that not only are they willing to like do food swaps and stuff like that, give advice, hey, you should check out this event, stuff like that. But also, hey, I have this event coming up. I'm not able to make it. Is there any way you could fill in?
Yeah.
Those are other things that happen and stuff like that. So when we talk about this community, stepping on each other's toes doesn't do us any favors, anybody.
The only entity that benefits is the big franchises that are known to put us out of business. They're the only ones that stand to benefit when they put two small time coffee huts together. They both lose. The only ones that wins are the big franchises. In that, I think it's just a piss poor way to look at it, and it's very short sighted, and it just kind of gets me frustrated at the short sighted competition that's just completely unnecessary, doesn't need to happen. especially when there's so much to gain when we work together. And the fact that that was kind of lost, it was a good opportunity for us to kind of work together and to benefit each other in different ways. And that was kind of lost needlessly. And again, like I said, the only people that are going to benefit are the big franchises that we have no way to compete with. So,
because it is interesting, because that first day that happened, I mean, we extended the olive branch of kindness, and you know, decided we weren't even going to. We didn't even stay. We left, and I brought it home, and I told them that, you know, I don't want to compete with you. That didn't make any sense. We're both trying to make it work out here, so let's not do that. And so I'm going to extend you the courtesy. You got here a few minutes before I did. We're supposed to have it at this point, but you're already set up and you're brand new. The young girl that was doing it was right out of high school, so it's brand new. And so I give them some grace there as well, recognizing that, you know, we all learn how we need to get along with one another, but there's some common sense things that you don't do. And they knew that we set up on Mondays and Wednesdays. I mean, they knew that, and they were there anyway, again. And so, yeah, that's a bit frustrating. And I did talk with them, and told them I was not, didn't feel that was an appropriate way for us to work, you know, side by side each other. And we need to be able to do that. And so anyway, that's a sad situation, but that's what happened.
I also, so when I first learned about them, I was looking at their menu and things that they offer, and they're not to go into too many details, but they don't have a one-to-one copy of what we serve. Their angle and their market is different from what we offer.
Right.
Very
In
much.
ways that, again, that goes back to, I was kind of excited about the opportunity to work together, because we could have used we could have exchanged different strategies, or we could have worked together in a way that aligned with their market and our market. It sounds vague, but because I don't want to go into exactly what their menu is, but just things like that was kind of a lost opportunity. But anyways, not to dwell on that too much. It is what it is. But anything else we want to talk about before we move on to the main protein of today?
No, I'll add one little tidbit
Go for it.
on that, and it's something that we've already talked about. And I think the most important thing that we took away from it is concentrate on what we can concentrate on and what we can control, and be true to our values and who we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because that's different too. Like, I know that our core mission, which is something we went over in the last week's podcast,
Absolutely.
is quite different from theirs. And so that's just what we got to focus on.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about maximizing plant diversity, which is the second principle of regenerative agriculture. It's number 2 out of 5 total. So to recap, the very first one is minimum soil disruption, which is a podcast we did already. So if you want to go into a deep dive on what the first principle is, it's a couple episodes back, but it's called minimal soil disruption. Gonna get her out of the way. And then the second one being maximize plant diversity. The third principle is maintain soil coverage. And then the fourth one is integrate livestock. And the fifth one is avoid chemicals and artificial fertilizers. And we are gonna do, we're on number 2 right now, but we're gonna hit 3, 4, and 5 in future episodes. Let's, I guess, first identify what the problem is that we're trying to solve here with this second principle. In conventional farming methods, this is something we talk about repeatedly on this program, but conventional methods rely entirely on monocultures, meaning that they plant and grow a single crop in a large area. Usually it's year over year over year.
Right.
And that's really what a monoculture, a monocrop is. And so this method there's pros and cons to it, of course. You can definitely harvest large quantities this way. It's simpler to, I guess, harvest to both seed and harvest. And you saw that happen, didn't
Tom
you?
just sat on his keyboard and all of his notes just.
Where am I at? I don't remember what I just said. You cultivate it year over year, and then there's pros and cons to it. So
So
thanks a lot,
harvesting.
Tom.
Well, so harvesting, one thing about that, and I don't even know, like a combine is not set up to differentiate between, like if you had corn and soy planted in the same field, I don't think you could
Yeah, you'll
harvest
need
them
two.
at the
You'd
same
you'll need
time.
different, or yeah, I don't think there is equipment that can harvest two different things at the same time.
Once again, could be ignorant to that, but I'm pretty sure you can only do one crop at a time
In terms of harvesting it?
in harvesting. So if you
Yeah.
if you did monoculture and you had soybean, corn in the same field,
Mhm.
you couldn't run a combine through.
No, well, there are different implements on the combine
Right.
that harvest corn,
Different heads.
that harvest wheat, yeah, the heads are different.
Yeah.
And so, and there's a timing thing.
Yeah.
There's time when you do the soybean, there's time when you do the corn. Of course, the wheat will come up here, the winter wheat will come up here
They
in
just
June.
started harvesting actually down
yeah.
the road.
Yeah.
No, really.
Yeah, they're already harvesting winter wheat.
So one problem with this method is that you're depleting the nutrients within the soil. So the repeated extraction of the plants will utilize the same nutrients year over year over year, and then they're depleting those nutrients for that plant within the soil. So that's one thing. There's also an increased vulnerability to pests and diseases that thrive when there is just one singular preferred host. So an example of this is bananas, actually. So there's a species of bananas called the Gros Michel. I think I'm pronouncing that right. The Gros Michel bananas were dominant. They were the dominant banana up until the late 50s and early 60s. So if you could time travel back to, I don't know, like sometime before that period, and you went to the store and bought a banana, it would be a completely different banana. Like it would taste different, it would look different. I think they were thicker, they had seeds in them, and so if you go to, those candies that usually, I don't know if they have them anymore, but if you put a quarter in that machine, you can turn the thing, yeah, and then there's like an array of like fruit-shaped candies. There was a banana one, and that banana one doesn't taste like a banana at all. And
No,
I've always wondered why that was, and it's because that is a really old candy, and it was flavored it was flavor profiled to the Gros Michel.
You're telling me a runt banana is what bananas used to taste like?
Yeah, and like roughly, yeah.
Okay, but the point is, there used to be another banana
Yes.
that was out there.
Very different flavor profile.
I know they don't taste anything like. I mean, I guess they do. They do a little bit, but
So what happened? An insect?
yeah. So there was something called the Panama disease, which is a fungus that wiped out pretty much the entire species, all over the globe. I'm sure there's like parts, like I don't know, in Africa or maybe the Amazon or something, where you might find a wild tree and it's still like a Gros Michel species. But for the most part, at least industrially, commercially, those don't exist anymore. And they were replaced by a species called the Cavendish banana, which is what we have today in stores today. And this is because this particular species of banana is resistant to that fungus, the Panama disease that took over. So these Cavendishes are grown as monocultures, but they're also a single species, so that every single banana is genetically identical to each other. And they are legitimately worried to this day that a new disease could come up and just completely wipe out all bananas on the globe.
Yeah.
Like this is a thing that worries the industry, which is actually I think bananas are the #1 selling product ever, always, for all time.
I know they're #1 fruit.
They're the #1 selling beyond fruit, like of any category, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I think they're trying to like genetically modify a new species or something, but
Again, we haven't learned our lesson yet.
Well, even closer to home, another example is like in your cotton crops, which is a monocultural crop that's grown in Georgia, Alabama, down in that area. There's the cotton. It has I forget the full name, but a cotton weevil.
Yeah.
That gets in there and has destroyed that crop, or can destroy that crop if you don't do something to control the pests.
Yeah.
And so the same thing applies to corn and to soybean. There are pests that are specific to those particular.
Christmas trees.
Yeah, Christmas trees are the same way. We have white pine weevil
Yeah.
in ours. If we were growing Scotch pine, we had the European sawfly in there. That would give us problems, bagworms, but nothing bad, nothing serious. We did have a situation with Scotch pine where we got something called brown spot. And it's a fungus. It's a particular kind of fungus that wiped out all of our Scotch pine. Thank goodness we were diversified enough. We had 12 different species of Christmas trees growing that allowed us to overcome that. But we had 2,000 trees planted in the ground. We lost every one of them. And then even the Colorado blue spruce, they're getting a disease on them that's affecting the bottoms, and it attacks the bottoms, and it's a fungus as well.
Yeah.
Goes up through the top of the trees. And so we've had to take out most all of our Colorado blue spruce as a result of that too.
Yeah.
But
that's unfortunate because I really like the way the blue spruces look.
Yeah, they're a beautiful tree.
I mean, and obviously another example is the American chestnut.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, got wiped out because of the blight. But so when you have these monocultures, you're also reducing the resilience to droughts and flooding and extreme weather and things like that. There's also a decline in population within like beneficial insects in the environment, the pollinators, and then all those soil-based organisms. So those also lower in natural diversity and create other problems too. And then you end up with a complete dependence on chemicals and artificial fertilizers in order to maintain those year over year. And I am talking kind of long term, not just like seasonally.
And that's so where that has also become dangerous in terms of like pesticides and stuff like that. We talk about you have a monoculture, so you have one pest that attacks that, and then you develop a herbicide or a insecticide that kills that insect, but then you have certain bugs that become immune to that one, so then you have to create a new insecticide. And it's the same company who's making it and making millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, they just benefit from it.
Right. Meanwhile, you're poisoning the earth and all that other fun stuff.
Yeah, so
anyways,
it's just an endless cycle that only benefits those companies and no one else. So there's, as you can see, just all those things compounded together, you end up with just all kinds of biological messes within the environment. And that's both above and below the soil. The surface of the soil, and you just end up with a weaker agricultural ecosystem overall.
Right.
And so with this second principle of, maximizing plant diversity, you're trying to tackle those issues and things like that. So what would I guess if you want to go ahead and define what this is a little bit more.
So when we talk about traditional farming and everything like that, you have monocrops, but you change between 3 or 4 different species of crops in the same field, where you're kind of doing some diversifying. But what we're talking about in this specific instance is having 15 different species of plants or more growing on the same acreage and thriving together.
What would be like a cover crop is so as we're restoring the soil in field 7, we've been over the course of 5 years, we seasonally planted a diverse mixture of cover crop to grow for one season until we terminate it. And so that diverse mixture of different grasses and stuff is an example of ways how we're utilizing the second principle, right?
Yeah, that's a good example of it.
Well, maybe it would be helpful if I talk a little bit about why it's important. Okay, so we've defined it a little bit. And so if we understand why it's important, we think about what nature is doing. And what nature does is it uses a complex set of relationships in symbiosis. And that's a big word. That basically means in working together to be able to provide the kinds of nutrients that a plant needs to grow. And so plant diversity, maximizing plant diversity does that in a number of different ways. One, and this is really an important distinction, is that when you have a diverse set of plants that are supporting your farm. You're putting different root exudates into the ground. What's a root exudate? That's the stuff that the root actually exudes into the soil to impact bacteria, fungi, microbes, that kind of thing. So what it is, it's sugars, it's proteins, and it's other compounds. And then by putting them into the soil, that allows bacteria, fungi, and other kinds of microbes to benefit from those root exudates. But those root exudates are different. If you have one plant like a monoculture, it's producing sugars, proteins, and compounds, but will only propagate the kinds of bacteria and fungi that those particular exudates support.
Right.
So when you have a wide variety of different plants out there, then those root exudates allow you to have a greater diversity of different kinds of fungi and bacteria and microorganisms and so forth. So that's one reason why this is so important.
Also, similarly to that, and I'm just thinking here, but I would assume that every plant is probably made up of different, like the actual plant itself probably contains an array of different nutrients and components, so that when it does terminate at some point and then it decays on that soil, it's releasing that back into the soil, and then you have decay and insects and that come in that probably thrive differently depending on what matter of decay is happening on the soil too.
That's right. So that actually gets to a second reason why it's so important, and that is nutrient cycling. So one of the big things you mentioned, there's two benefits in nutrient cycling. You mentioned one, as the plant deteriorates, then it's putting different nutrients into the soil, that kind of thing. But another big thing that it does is because you have different kinds of root systems. You've got deep root systems, you got shallow root systems, some that spread out, some that have tap roots, some that have big, large root systems, like a radish, as an example. But what happens there is you're tapping into different profiles of the soil and pulling those nutrients up so that the plants up toward the surface can benefit from that. So again, going back to a monoculture product like corn or soybean, very shallow root systems, so they can only access nutrients within the 4 to 6 inches that root zone is in. But you throw in things like rye or alfalfa that have very deep root systems, 10 to 12 feet deep, all those nutrients that are down there are otherwise not available to the plants at the surface. And so by having plants that can tap into that, you bring those nutrients up to the surface. So that's another real benefit to it. A third reason why it's important to have plant diversity is this whole idea of risk mitigation or risk diversification. So if you think about that, what a wide variety of plants do for us is they allow us to, kind of like our portfolio for financial things. If you diversify, you have different stocks and metals and bonds and things like that, you reduce the risk that financially, if you were to take a loss somewhere. Well, same thing with plant diversity, is when you do that, you reduce risks of things like droughts. So you can tolerate a drought much better because of that. If you have insect damage, you can tolerate an infestation of insects because you have a more diverse set of plants that are on your farm. You can also weather storms much better. That kind of thing those are kind of different reasons why having a diverse set of plants is good for you.
Also, just to get I want to dig into that other one real quick, where if you have an insect problem and if you have an insect problem on a field that has a diverse crop planted in it, you might have a pest that comes in and infests a particular plant, but because there's an array of other plants, those other plants might bring in completely different pests, which are actually predatory of that first pest. So they kind of work together in that ecosystem to help mitigate so that one pest doesn't overtake an entire field. There's blocks in place to prevent that from happening So
Yeah, so you have a natural attraction. So with multiple diverse set of plants out there, yes, you still can have a insect infestation of some sort.
Sure.
But you're gonna also have plants that are gonna bring in, they're gonna attract what's called beneficial insects.
Right.
And those are the ones that eat the bad insects. So an example of that is a praying mantis. Praying mantis are super good. We always want them out in our trees because they take care of a lot of the aphids and the mites and those kinds of nasty bugs that we don't want out there. So yeah, exactly. So diversity allows you to diversify your risk, or in other words, mitigate your risk a little bit. Then I think a last reason why it's so important to have a variety of different plants in your regenerative farm is because it's going to bring biomass to the fore that we've not seen up to this point. I mean, remember we planted sorghum Sudan, which is a grass. Yeah. That was, when we crimped it, it was well over 10 feet tall in a lot of areas. That's a tremendous amount of mass that goes right into the ground that becomes organic matter.
Which is already pretty much broken down.
Oh yeah, a lot of that's already broken down, which is exactly what we wanted.
Yeah.
But then you have other things like attracting beneficial insects. That's a very important piece of it. And then other ecological things that really are good is that it allows water to be retained in the soil, and that allows us then to retain and improve the quality of the water. So those kind of ecological benefits are all part of the reasons why as well. Yeah, so root exudates, you've got nutrient cycling, you've got diversifying your risk, and you've got an ecological support benefit to this whole thing.
And a lot of those, especially the like root exudates one, is really just centered around soil. And it's amazing how I always forget how you look at a field and you're only really seeing that surface level, but there's a whole ecosystem that's happening underneath it, and all those roots and stuff that I always forget that's just as important, maybe more important.
Yeah, if you don't have a healthy soil, then you really don't have anything else.
Right. And that goes back to the first principle, which you really have to understand. It's number one for a reason.
Right, right.
And I mean, if you think about this, I think it's also good to think about this over time, because we're really just talking about like how we farm today, and when it comes to our particular farm and how we use regenerative practices, but there's also conventional farming that occurs throughout most of our country. If you think about it from a historical perspective, it goes into all kinds of different things. So historically speaking, if you go back in time, throughout most of human history, agriculture has been operating within some degree of diversification when it comes to plants. And it wasn't really, like I said before, it wasn't until like the recent, around World War II era where that kind of changed prominently within the country, at least.
Right, right.
But throughout the globe, I mean, you have natural ecosystems such as in nature that occur, like the savanna or forest or prairies, grasslands, things like that. Each of those individually will contain hundreds, if not thousands, of plant species that all live together and serve a purpose within each other.
It's that symbiosis I was talking about.
Yeah.
That complex relationship of all these plants working together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That also creates super fertile soil for that ecosystem. Those soils are going to be, the composition are going to be completely different depending on whether you're in, a forest or a wet grasslands or something like that.
But you're still going to have soil aggregate.
Yeah.
That's going to have just tons of bacteria and fungi and microbes in there.
All the good stuff.
And a wide variety of it too.
And there are many traditional farming techniques that utilize crop rotations and in some form of like intercropping. Like you have corn, beans, and squash. It happens all over the world where they do that rotation, but there's also another form of intercropping where maybe intercropping is the wrong word, but they do that locally here, where you have a rotation, a yearly annual rotation of bean or soybean and corn.
Yeah.
And they do that annually for very similar reasons. You're trying to alternate the nutritional composition of the soil
Right.
from a year-to-year basis.
Yeah, if you just plant one and you stick with that, you're going to deplete that soil so quickly.
Very rapidly.
Say, you know, pumpkin is an example of that. You have to rotate pumpkin.
Yeah.
You can't grow it in the same spot every year, and part of the reason for that is the depletion of the soil. Now, another reason is disease, because it'll get fungus in there real quick. But yeah, you got to move that monoculture crop around.
After World War II, we had advances in the mechanization and synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and then you have special equipment to seed and harvest those things, which all that did was just kind of, at least in the country, it encouraged larger agricultural industries within that are all monocrop methods. So these systems increase production efficiency, and they eliminate biological diversity and accelerate soil degradation, erosion, and dependence on those chemicals and artificial fertilizers. And then today, we have regenerative agriculture, which has been around for a long time, but it's been popularized recently. I mean, it's gone through a few waves. I think there was a big wave in the 80s, and then I think it was having another resurgence today. I think it's because we're facing a lot of these soil issues that have come out of conventional monocrop methods that we're seeing, like soil erosion for one example. And so I think people are they're seeing the writing on the wall. They're seeing that there's all kinds of problems with this method, and they're becoming more interested in regenerative agriculture because it not only does it reduce or eliminate those issues, but it actually rebuilds and heals the scarring left from those monoculture methods of farming.
Years of abuse.
There's a pretty big, as you're alluding to, there's a big environmental impact to this as well, you know, when it comes to quality of the water. So as you get these monocultures and you get these rains that come in, you have a tremendous amount of runoff. And that runoff contains a lot of that fertilizer and pesticides and the different kinds of things. And then that goes right into our water system. Frankly, it goes into our water tables, you know, which we get our water from here on this farm. We get our water from a water table right below us.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's things like that. And then you see the Mississippi Delta and how you've got that zone where that dead zone where nothing's growing. And we're talking the size of the.
Isn't it Rhode Island?
Rhode Island, whatever it's big, it's massive.
Massive.
But that's due to runoff, you know, among other things. So yeah, this has been a problem for us, and so regenerative agriculture is trying to change that.
Yeah. So what are some of the benefits for using this method within regenerative agriculture?
So we've talked about some of them. So improving soil health, which, you know, increasing the organic matter, whether that's through when we do roller crimping and we terminate, or whether it's through cattle coming through and squishing it into the ground and kneading it in there. You're introducing new organic matter into that soil that breaks down and helps build up.
Right.
Right. And feeds that soil a little bit.
So you're like building new soil over time too.
Essentially, yeah. And I mean, what is his name? Not Mark Shepard.
Salatine?
Brown?
Salatine.
Yeah.
Talks about on his farm when they first bought the land and everything, that you could see the rock formation.
Oh yeah.
And everything. And now you have 5 feet of just beautiful soil on top. So another benefit to improving the soil health is the structure and aggregation within the soil. So, and some of that is aeration.
Yep.
Having those air pockets built into the soil, which allows you to store more water and be able to hopefully replenish some of the water table that we have just depleted over the years. And I mean, be long after we're gone, but
Yeah.
it would be nice to replenish some of that. As we have diversity and everything like that, we talked about how when you have 15, 16 different plants in an area or more, they're all providing something different to the soil, which also creates a better environment for microbials, fungi, insects, all these things working together, living together. You talked about how when you have a monocrop or culture or something along those lines, you're going to have this mass influx of insects, predator insects.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this other plant that comes in and feeds on that and everything like that, which we've seen a little bit out here on our farm. And eventually we'll find that equilibrium where everything will ebb and flow together and it's all good. Those nuisance insects are no longer nuisance. They're just insects.
Right.
And
Just like
sometimes,
weeds.
like you said, we haven't gotten to this point yet on our farm, but from what I understand and from what I've been reading and from people like Salatine and Mark Shepard, is you can also use these infestations as signals to locate problem areas within your farm. And that's something like I think I'm pretty unfamiliar with, but I guess there's a science to that madness too, where you can kind of like how we try to troubleshoot issues that we have with our chickens, where you just look at the symptoms that you're having and then you can kind of troubleshoot and figure out what problem you're having and how to fix that. And I think that insects and infestations can be a similar signal to that as well.
Yeah, and another example is what we call different kinds of weeds. Now,
Right.
the way I want to capture that is a weed to us today is not a weed tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah, because different kinds of weeds tell you something about the nutrients or the lack of nutrients in the soil.
Within that soil, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's all about observation, paying attention to what's going on out there.
Yeah.
There's a couple other benefits that we can mention around this area of plant diversification, and that's this whole idea of environmental impact. And so when we think about it helps with droughts, it helps with excess rainfall. Having different plants out there allows water to be handled differently, and it can absorb the water. Or you have those plants, like we had mentioned before, that are drought tolerant. But those help. Those are benefits that the farm enjoys. Another one that I think is really important for us to talk about is this whole idea of a diversified income that you get. So with plant diversity, what happens is that allows you to be able to have different kinds of revenue streams. So for example, for us, we're going to have a chestnut revenue stream. And then potentially, because now you are taking a kind of a two-dimensional monoculture activity, turning it into a regenerative activity, and now you can add a third dimension to that. And that third dimension we're trying to capitalize on is height. And so putting chestnuts out there is going to do a number of things to help us in terms of feeding the cattle that we're going to have out there. We're going to be able to sell the chestnuts ourselves, and it's going to give us winterization. A fodder for winterization.
Yep.
But then we can plant apple trees in between the chestnut trees, or different. We can do peaches or pears, but you can market those things. You can put grapevines around the trees.
The chestnut trees in particular,
Right.
and then I believe
right.
can't you harvest them around the same time? Like, isn't there some sort of natural pairing when it comes to harvesting?
I think in fact there is.
Yeah, so that's a really good pair.
Yeah, and then at the ground level, you can put a perennial like asparagus. You can put that in, and we can harvest that. So you just got to think a little bit broad. Then it comes to livestock, and we're talking about cattle, but we can also be adding sheep to the mix, pigs to the mix, goats to the mix. We've got chickens that'll be following the cattle out there, and then we have egg production as well. So the point is, instead of having a single product that you're marketing, so corn or soybean or whatever, or cotton, whatever the case may be, you can have a wide, diverse set of resources available to you. And so that's a real benefit. But in addition to that, because typically with restoration agriculture, you're using perennial plants. And everything that I mentioned were perennial plants.
Yep.
Well, what that does is that means you don't have to replant the next year, which means, yeah, you're not using fuel or labor, or because we're not disturbing the soil, much of the large equipment that farms use today, you don't need anymore. And so you reduce that. So all that benefits how much funding you're getting in. Your profit margin now is better.
Yeah.
And so plant diversification is critical to that part of the whole thing. And I think another benefit, probably, I don't know if I can think of any other ones, but this last one is this whole thing that we were talking about, the ecology. You know, when we talk about the ecology of our farm, we're thinking about the benefits that it's going to have to native or wildlife out there, or having beneficial and getting beneficial insects in there, getting pollinators in there. That's going to be necessary for fruiting trees and those kinds of things. And same thing with, like I said, the drought tolerance and stuff like that. All of those are ecological benefits to this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and even if you, like you said, pollinators, if we had, that's another like potential revenue stream with honey.
Talked about.
Yeah.
We have, yeah, that's right.
I mean, so when did we start? When did you start the farm in 20? You opened in.
Yeah, 2006 we moved here. 2007 we planted our first trees, but in 2009 we went into beekeeping, and so we did do that for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then it just got the Christmas. It was just, again, at the time it was just me and Trudy, so it took so much time for us to do all the other stuff. As we expanded from one field to 6 fields and went from 1 tree to 15,000 trees, we lost our ability to do other things. And so we ended up selling all of our equipment and
like
everything.
Like a year before, we were like, we should do honeybees.
Yes. Literally, it was a year before. In 2021, I think we sold all of that equipment, and there was a lot. And oh my gosh, that hurt.
That's a shame. But that is another example of like profitability, because ever since that time when you started the Christmas tree farm, you were only selling Christmas trees. And I mean, I've mentioned this before, but the Christmas tree operation is only it's only receiving revenue 4 days out of the entire year. And so although it was a healthy business, and it still is a healthy business, it's not diversified, and you do have that risk of that. Absolutely. Of something happening within those 4 days and potentially losing a lot of revenue. So being able to diversify our income streams with everything that you've already mentioned with the chestnuts and et cetera is very beneficial just from a business standpoint as well.
Yeah. How are we doing this on our farm? How are we applying plant diversification? How are we maximizing that on our farm? When we started this back in 2023, one of the things we quickly recognized after we did a water infiltration test in field 7, which is the field that we are using for regenerative agriculture, and it failed miserably.
We don't have water infiltration.
Yeah, in essence,
basically,
it took 10 minutes in one section. We did it in 3 different sections. 10 minutes for water, 1 inch of water to soak into the soil. And then in the other 2 areas, one was 7.5 minutes, one was 8 minutes. Terrible. I mean, you should see several inches of water go down into the soil in a minute. Several inches of water. Yeah. So I think we're seeing a lot more of that now than what we did before. But how are we introducing this into our farm? Well, we decided in 2023 when we put that, or we took that field, those little slightly less than 17 acres, out of production, out of monoculture production, corn and soybean, all being done by a farmer, a friend of ours not too far away from here, was doing rent crop kind of thing for us. We took it out of production, and in 2023, that winter, we planted our first winter cover crop. And so that winter cover crop, one of the key things, again, that we're looking at here is we didn't disturb the soil, and we planted a wide, diverse set of plants. What did we plant? We planted a number of grasses, legumes, brassicas, and forbs. But let me define those, because if you're not used to those terms, then some of them don't make a lot of sense. We all know what a grass is, a long, thin, single blade, shallow root system, but a tremendous amount of biomass. Yeah. And so some of them, like I mentioned already, sorghum Sudan, produces, a lot of biomass. So those are your grasses. And so they grow quickly, and they're very, very good for cattle in particular. But then you've got things like legumes. So a legume, many people know legumes as being like bean plants. So what do they really add to our soil profile? Well, what a legume does is it takes the nitrogen that is not something that the plant can consume. They take that nitrogen from the air and they put it into the soil through their root exudates that we talked about before. Well, but that's not really fixing the nitrogen to the soil. What that's doing is that's benefiting a certain kind of bacteria that takes those root exudates and change that nitrogen into a form of nitrogen that the plant can take up. So that's the beauty of legumes, is they really help in that area. And nitrogen is one of those macronutrients that is absolutely critical for a plant to thrive in. So that's what legumes do. Then you have your brassicas. And your brassicas are things like turnips, rapeseed, you think of radishes, cauliflower, you can think of broccoli, cabbage. Those are all brassicas. They are all from the mustard family. And so what they do is they all have pretty large root systems. And I'll especially focus on things like turnips and radishes, because we can visualize that in our head. You know how big those roots are. Now, some of those radishes that we had planted out there, they were this long and super big.
Right.
Well, what that does is that breaks up the soil. That reduces your soil compaction. So that's a beautiful thing. So we want brassicas in our mix of plants that we're putting out there for our cover crops. Then we have forbs. Okay, so a forb is basically a broadleaf plant that also adds a tremendous amount of biomass, but helps in nutrient recycling, because they have oftentimes deep roots. Not all the time, but oftentimes those kind of plants will have deep roots. So you get that nutrient cycling benefit that we talked about. So those 4 different groupings of plants are what we ended up planting. It's about 4 grasses, 2 legumes, and we had a couple of each, maybe 3 of each of our brassicas and our forbs that we planted that first season. And that was in 2023. And then in 2024, we planted a summer cover crop and a winter cover crop. 2025, we did the exact same, summer, winter. And then in 2026, this spring, we planted our initial perennial pasture mix. And that had a mix of about 15 different grasses, forbs, brassicas, and legumes. And so all of that has been really, really beneficial to creating that ecosystem we've been talking about within the soil. So there's how we've been doing that. And then how we terminate, because every time you go from one cover crop to another cover crop, you actually have to terminate the one before it goes to seed. You don't want that to happen, so that you can get another mix in there that is going to that's going to maximize its purpose to the soil during that short amount of time. So we use, so how did I select those kinds of things? Because I'm not that smart. I couldn't do that on my own. So we used a company called Green Cover. We've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about it right now, because Green Cover has been so important to helping us understand what is the right mix. Because you can do a lot of different things. You can put the wrong kind of seed down out there, or you're not, you can put plants in there that aren't doing what you need now.
Right.
Like biomass. I need a lot of biomass. And so those are the things that the Smart Mix calculator, which is something that Green Cover put together, this calculator takes some inputs from me, like what's your location, and by zip code, it is able to determine how much rainfall we get, what is our soil structure basically like in this area. I tell it the acreage that we're looking at, and I tell it how much irrigation, if we're doing any, which we don't, irrigation, if we're doing any at all, then it wants to know how much more we're irrigating, that kind of thing. And then goals. So I tell it, this is what I'm looking to do. And then it has a drop down of I don't know, probably 20 different goals that are in there. But I select the things that I'm looking for. So the goals that I was working toward back in 2023 was maximizing our organic matter so that we can get as much biomass on the ground and start the process of breaking that down. So we had that going. And then in addition to that, I wanted to fix as much nitrogen in the soil as I can to feed the plants as best that we can feed them because our nitrogen was not good in our soil. And then I wanted to make sure that we were planting the kinds of plants that are going to benefit our initial perennial pasture mix. Now, in talking with them, their sales rep, after I put all that stuff in there into the Smart Mix calculator, which is online, I put all that in there, it spits out a laundry list of what it recommends for our area and for our goals and all those kinds of things. And so I now get on the phone with this guy, a sales rep, and he goes over the whole thing with me at length because he really wanted to understand, what are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do what we're trying to do? What are the goals that we're trying to achieve? All that kind of good stuff. And he would then do tweaks, small incremental tweaks to the mix until we got it about right. And so that's what we did every single time that we did a summer-winter cover crop. And so that's been extremely beneficial to us. And so I was mentioning the termination process. We use, because you can terminate it a number of different ways, including using chemicals. And many people do on regenerative agriculture kinds of things.
So counterintuitive.
Oh, absolutely. But they'll use Roundup because Roundup will just knock out most anything. But we don't do that. And so we used what's called a roller crimper. And so it's a 5-foot wide device. It's a big roller that has these metal ribs on it. And as those metal ribs on the roller, because you can fill that roller up with 330, I think, gallons is what goes into that. So it's very heavy at that point. You multiply that times 6, you get to 1,900 pounds of water, and plus the weight of the unit itself. That rolls over those 10-foot tall sorghum Sudan grass things that we had out there, and it crimps it. And that terminates it, meaning that it prevents it from growing any further. That then is the base for the next year. And we've done that 3 years now. And so we, like I said, we planted our initial perennial pasture mix this year. It's not done as well as I hoped because we've gotten such an overgrowth of hairy vetch out there.
Yeah, that hairy vetch is insane.
Yeah. So that has smothered much of the perennial pasture mix that we wanted to get going this year. So I'm going to probably have to do it again next year.
Right.
But the point is, that's how we've been incorporating this principle of maximizing plant diversity on this farm.
So one thing we didn't cover, and probably let you cover it because you know way more about this than I do, is warm season versus cool season crops.
Well, so what that basically means, and most of, by the way, our initial perennial pasture is primarily cool season.
Right.
So what we're looking for, so what's the difference between cool season and warm season plants? The difference is when they germinate. So the temperature of the soil is lower, is typically substantially lower for cool season grasses in particular, and then your warm season grasses, but it can apply to your forbs and your brassicas and your legumes as well. But I'll just talk grasses at this point. But your warm season will germinate at above 65 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas your cool season grasses will germinate well below that. Well, what does that mean? How does that impact us in our farm out here? Is especially once you get cattle out there, what happens with cool season plants is they have an initial growth spurt that's pretty significant. That'll happen in April, May timeframe. Then they're going to slow down their growth, and your warm season grasses and so forth are going to pop up at that point, where your cool season is going to temper down. They're not going to be growing nearly as much, but then in the fall, late summer, early fall, they peak again. And so between the two, you get this real nice mix. But we're sticking right now to cool season because we want to get that established before we introduce the warm season grasses. Because the cool season is going to carry us through that's going to be the key to carrying us through as far into winter as possible without having to supplement feed. See, so you want to get that
For
cool
the cows,
season,
right? The cattle.
for the cattle. Yeah, all of this is for our livestock.
Right.
So that's where those two come into play and why they're different and how they're different for the farm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I thought that our perennial pasture mix was a good mixture of cool and hot.
No, in fact,
warm season.
we put 12 to 15. I can't remember exactly what that number is, but all of them but one were cool season.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and one was a brassica.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a radish, I think,
Yeah.
that's out there. And they don't, there's not many cool season brassicas. There may be more, but for us and for
Right.
our purposes and goals and things like that, there weren't many to choose from, and we didn't need them really. But once we get the initial perennial pasture going and we got that established, we'll introduce the warm season grasses in particular. Yeah, so that we can have a good growth all the way through as many, the late spring, all through the summer, into the fall, to maximize.
That also makes more sense. See, that makes way more sense now on why we're waiting so long before we introduce cattle to that acreage.
Yeah. Now we could, frankly, many have done this. We could do it too. We could introduce cattle right now.
Right.
But I don't think that's a smart move. We've invested a lot of time. We need to have patience and not get ahead of ourselves and give ourselves the best opportunity to have the ideal pasture out there when we do introduce our animals. Why? Because we're not going to be doing things like inoculating them with all kinds of nasty stuff, and we're so the veterinarian care that you typically would have, we're not going to be doing those things.
Right.
So why are we not doing those things? Because if you have a good pasture, they will get everything they need off of that pasture. Now that may be speaking out of ignorance, but our reading, and we've read a lot in this area, suggests otherwise. Yeah.
It also buys us some time for us to get ready financially to start the cattle operation too. So I don't think we're quite ready to do that.
Adding some realism to it, because you're exactly right. We're not quite ready to jump into that. But I like the ideal of, we're trying to,
Right.
Right.
It's not
because it is true. Both are true. Both are very true.
One just is a little more harsh.
Yeah.
We're too broke to afford cows.
That's right.
Yeah.
But we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Did we cover everything? I mean, I think we've exhausted the list of, at least from a topical conversation on the second principle, we've, I think, hit all the main things.
Yeah. And if there's anything that our audience would like us to focus on or to supplement,
Right.
just let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, throw it in the comments below and we'll respond to it. And I mean, I think there's one through line that probably sums up not only this second principle of maximizing plant diversity, but also all the other, the other 4 principles too. And that is that we're trying to, as closely as possible, resemble nature.
Right.
And we're not only, focusing on the health of the soil, the surface of the soil that you see with your eyes, but also what happens underneath the underground and things like that. And that's kind of like the main idea behind it all.
It takes time, it takes patience, it takes discipline. And so we're trying to do all of that here.
All right, well, I think that's a good stopping point right there. So if you guys have made it this far, go ahead and like this video and leave your comments below, hit subscribe, do all those things, and we will see you guys in the next video.